For decades, we were taught to recognize war by what explodes. Missiles launched, radars destroyed, air defenses firing into the sky. But what if the most decisive military victory leaves nothing burning and nothing firing? When US forces entered Venezuelan airspace, something extraordinary happened. The radars existed, the missiles were there, and yet Venezuelan air defenses never fired. This was not a technical failure. It was not hesitation. It was not mercy. It was the visible outcome of a deeper transformation in warfare, one where power is no longer measured by how much you can destroy, but by how completely you can remove the enemy's ability to decide. Today, wars are increasingly won before a single trigger is pulled. In the invisible space where information, authority, and fear intersect. If this sounds unsettling, it should, because it means future conflicts may end without battles, yet still reshape entire nations. If you want to understand how this became possible, stay with me. Because to grasp why nothing happened, we must first understand what kind of war this really was. At first glance, the question seems simple. Why didn't Venezuela's air defenses respond? But that framing already misses the point, because it assumes modern war still revolves around platforms, radars, missiles, aircraft, and their physical interaction. What actually unfolded points to something far more consequential. The absence of engagement was not an operational anomaly. It was the strategic outcome of a conflict in which the decisive arena was not the airspace above Venezuela, but the decision architecture of the Venezuelan state itself. What mattered was not whether systems could detect or track, but whether anyone could authorize action without triggering irreversible escalation. In contemporary warfare, firing is no longer a technical reflex. It is a political act, a sovereign commitment, and a strategic gamble. Under extreme asymmetry, the act of engagement can become more dangerous than restraint. This is where modern conflict has shifted its center of gravity, from the destruction of forces to the neutralization of decision-making, from battlefield dominance to decision denial. To understand how this shift emerged, we need to step back into the deeper historical and doctrinal forces that reshaped war long before Venezuela. To see how we arrived here, we have to unlearn a century of habit. For most of modern history, war followed a visible logic. You located enemy forces, you destroyed their platforms, and command collapse followed. Firepower created victory. But as militaries grew more complex, something subtle changed. Systems multiplied, command chains lengthened, and information, once a supporting element, became the connective tissue holding everything together. By the late 20th century, wars like Kosovo, Iraq, and Libya revealed a pattern. Regimes did not fall because every weapon was destroyed. They fell because coordination failed, orders slowed. Authority fragmented, confusion preceded collapse. What emerged was a shift from platform-centric warfare to system-centric warfare, and then, quietly, to decision-centric warfare. The decisive point was no longer a bridge, a base, or a battalion. It was the moment between detection and authorization, between knowing and acting. As networks replaced hierarchies and sensors outpaced human cognition, the real vulnerability moved upward into the political and institutional space where decisions are made. Venezuela did not invent this problem. It inherited it, and when pressure was applied, that vulnerability surfaced not as chaos, but as silence. The first rupture did not arrive as an explosion. It arrived as a dilemma. At the tactical level, Venezuelan air defense operators could see activity. Tracks appeared, signals accumulated. But none of this answered the only question that mattered. Should we fire? Because firing was no longer a defensive reflex. It was a strategic point of no return. Engaging US aircraft would not simply activate missiles. It would activate escalation, military, political, and informational, at a scale Venezuela could neither control nor survive. In that moment, tactical initiative flipped into strategic liability. This is the first mini-crisis of modern warfare. when every available option is bad, and restraint becomes the least catastrophic choice. The command chain tightened instead of acting. Authorization stalled. Responsibility diffused upward, then vanished into ambiguity. Each layer waited for the next until waiting itself became the decision. This was not fear at the operator level. It was rational paralysis engineered by asymmetry. And this is the quiet truth many miss. Air defenses can remain intact, powered on, fully armed, yet functionally neutralized when the cost of action exceeds the value of defense. What neutralized Venezuela's air defenses was not a single weapon, but a system. On paper, the country possessed formidable platforms, long-range, medium-range, layered systems designed to deny airspace. But these platforms shared a hidden dependency. They could not act alone. Every engagement required a coherent chain-linking detection, identification, authorization, and execution. Break that chain, not physically, but cognitively, and the system survives while its function disappears. This is where contemporary warfare operates. Information saturation, electromagnetic pressure, cyber ambiguity, and intelligence penetration do not seek blindness. They seek uncertainty. Enough noise to delay, enough doubt to prevent commitment. When political authority is contested, that uncertainty multiplies. Orders lose credibility, responsibility becomes dangerous. The act of firing transforms from military execution into personal political risk. This is not decapitation. Leadership nodes remain in place. It is systemic strangulation. The command structure breathes, but it cannot move. Under these conditions, air defense platforms stop being weapons and become artifacts present, detectable, but strategically inert. They track without concluding. They wait without deciding. The second crisis unfolded faster and deeper. This time, there was no room left to wait. As informational pressure accumulated, the Venezuelan command system began to desynchronize. Signals arrived faster than they could be interpreted. Political authority narrowed instead of clarifying. Every additional data point increased risk rather than confidence. This is the second mini-crisis of decision-centric warfare. Speed without direction. In a system built on centralized authorization, tempo becomes a weapon. When the adversary controls the rhythm, delay compounds into paralysis. The faster the environment moves, the more dangerous every decision feels. At this stage, firing is no longer evaluated in military terms, but in existential ones. Who authorized it? Who bears responsibility if escalation spirals? Who survives the aftermath? So the system defaults again to non-decision. This is how escalation is neutralized before it begins. Not by overwhelming force, but by compressing time and cognition until no option appears survivable. The air defenses did not fail under attack. They failed under anticipation. For the people on the ground, this kind of war feels invisible until it isn't. If you are a civilian, silence in the sky does not mean safety. It means decisions about your future are being made elsewhere, beyond your reach, without your consent. When air defenses do not fire, it is not because nothing is happening. It is because power has shifted away from the state that claims to protect you. Sovereignty erodes quietly. Authority thins. And ordinary life continues under an unseen pressure it cannot name. You feel it as uncertainty, as stalled institutions, as leaders who hesitate instead of acting. In decision-centric warfare, people become collateral not through bombs, but through paralysis. When a state cannot decide, it cannot shield its population from economic shock, diplomatic isolation, or internal fragmentation. Stability dissolves, slowly but relentlessly. And this is the most human cost of modern conflict. Not fear of destruction, but loss of agency. If this resonates with you, pause for a moment. Share this analysis. Talk about it. Because understanding this shift is the first step toward recognizing power when it no longer announces itself with force. What happened in Venezuela does not stay in Venezuela. Decision-centric warfare scales globally because it exploits a universal vulnerability. All modern states depend on fragile decision architectures. The more complex the system, the more exposed it becomes to paralysis rather than destruction. For major powers, this changes deterrence itself. Traditional deterrence threatened punishment. This new model threatens irrelevance, the quiet removal of a state's ability to act meaningfully when it matters most. Geopolitically, this creates cascading effects. States with centralized, politicized command structures become brittle. States with distributed, adaptive decision systems gain leverage without firing a shot. Influence expands not through occupation, but through tempo control and narrative dominance. The global order is not shifting because wars are larger. It is shifting because wars are becoming quieter. And that silence is forcing every state to confront the same question. Can we still decide for ourselves? Looking forward, decision-centric warfare opens three distinct futures, and none of them are abstract. The first is a stabilizing future. States recognize the vulnerability of centralized decision chains and reform. Authority is clarified. Civil-military trust is rebuilt. Decision systems become distributed, resilient, and credible. The second future is managed stagnation. Decision paralysis becomes episodic, used to coerce, intimidate, or constrain without open conflict. Power shifts through hesitation rather than defeat. The third future is darker, systemic erosion. States retain institutions but lose effective agency. Conflict no longer needs violence. Pressure alone suffices. Which future emerges will not be decided by technology alone. It will be decided by how societies organize trust, authority, and responsibility inside their decision systems. Because the most dangerous weapon is not the one that destroys you. It is the one that makes choosing survival feel impossible. What Venezuela revealed is not a weakness of air defenses. It revealed the new definition of power. In the 21st century, victory no longer belongs to those who strike hardest, but to those who shape the moment before a strike is even conceivable. The battlefield has moved upstream into data, legitimacy, tempo, and perception. When that space is controlled, weapons remain silent not because they are obsolete, but because using them becomes irrational. This is the unsettling truth of modern war. You may still have missiles, you may still have soldiers, you may still claim sovereignty, but if your decision system can be frozen, your power exists only on paper. If this analysis helped you see power differently, share it. And if you want to go deeper into how decision-centric warfare will reshape deterrence, sovereignty, and global order, stay with me. Because the next wars won't be fought over territory. They will be fought over who gets to decide at all,